Hey monsters! Thanks for tuning in to Murder Murder News, the true crime cult for the latest breaking news, murdery memes, TV reviews, podcast recommendations, and all things spooky. If you're tired of sitting out this pandemic alone in a tiny apartment, come join our socially distanced cult where we have plenty of time and space to talk about murder while chasing around some baby goats. I'm television's Aurora Katie.
And I'm Angelina. Cults are no fun alone, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe and tell all of your true crime friends. This is the Week in True Crime.
Murder, murder, news.
There's a new Dr. Death on the block. His name is Devender Sharma, and he hails from India, where he was arrested in Brapola, Delhi last Wednesday. Indian police were led to Sharma's hideout when a tip was called in. He had recently married a widow and was living with her under a fake identity, trying to start a new life after fleeing while on a 20-day parole for good behavior back in January. Devender Sharma had been serving a life sentence at the Central Jail in Jaipur after being originally sentenced to death by hanging when he was convicted of several murders back in 2008. He was apprehended in 2004 when he was essentially caught in the act of murdering a pair of brothers who ran a taxi company. The serial killer masterminded a scheme carried out by himself and a gang of accomplices who would lure taxi drivers into secluded areas, posing as passengers, strangle them to death, and then dump their bodies in the crocodile-infested waters of the Hazara Canal. They would sell the taxis on the gray market, earning a few $100 per murder. At the time of his arrest in 2004, Sharma confessed to kidnapping and murdering up to 40 taxi drivers, though most of the bodies were never recovered. His wife and children publicly disowned him when the severity of his crimes hit the media. After his arrest last Wednesday, Devender Sharma was subjected to intense questioning, and he opened up about his life of crime. Dr. Death earned his nickname after operating a clinic of Ayurvedic medicine in Jaipur for 11 years, which he opened in 1984. Near the end of his medical career, he invested in a gas dealership that went belly up and vanished. Scorned, Sharma then pursued a variety of criminal endeavors to settle the score. In 1995, he set up a fake gas agency under the name of Bharat Petroleum. He and a gang of highway robbers would kill transport truck drivers and then steal their trucks to get LPG cylinders. Then they would sell the trucks for parts. Sharma was arrested and later released on bail. He resumed the gas company in 2001. Between 1994 and 2004, Dr. Death ran his most profitable and one of his most disturbing ventures, an interstate kidney racket, which he operated with the help of middlemen and other doctors. Sharma confessed to illegally transplanting 125 kidneys, making thousands of dollars in profit per victim. Overall, authorities suspect that Devender Sharma is responsible for well over 100 murders, but the exact number is hard to pinpoint because his crimes cross so many state lines and because of his horrific method of destroying evidence, those hungry crocodiles. Sharma told police that he doesn't remember how many people he has killed, and he says he lost count after 50. So in his 6 months of freedom under an alias, has Devender Sharma turned over a new leaf? Absolutely not. When police apprehended him last Wednesday, he was cooking up a new scam wherein he posed as a property developer to cheat clients into giving him money for property he doesn't own. Police say he showed no remorse for his crimes, and he seemed to enjoy the act of killing his victims.
On July 24th, 18-year-old Giovanna Fuda was reported missing from Kings County, Washington, after her car was found abandoned by a windy road in the Cascade Mountains, which she had nowhere in sight. Her car had run out of gas, and her purse was found inside of her car. Police weren't able to track her cell phone signal since she was in a dead zone in the mountains. The circumstances seemed very suspicious since Gia had left her purse and her car behind. She left her home in Maple Valley, where she lives with her parents, on Friday morning, and her mother believed she was going to get coffee and to study. Gia drove to a coffee shop 60 miles away in Index, Washington. Security footage caught photos of Gia inside the coffee shop and talking on her phone by her silver Corolla at 10 o'clock a.m. She then headed further east towards the mountains, where she ran out of gas. Gia's parents reported her missing the evening of the 24th, and her car was discovered abandoned on Highway 2 near Stevens Pass by the Department of Transportation on the 25th. A search began the next day, which involved hundreds of volunteers and rescue dogs. The forest was dense with brush, which means the only option rescue crews had was to search by foot. The search continued for 7 days, and the following Saturday, Gia's notebook, jacket, shoes, socks, backpack, Bible, and cell phone were found along Scenic River not far from where her car was parked. This seemed like very bad news, but 30 minutes later, Gia was found safe. Rescuers found her up a pretty steep ravine about 3 to 4 miles from where her car was parked. Gia was very disoriented when the team found her, but she seemed fine other than having some scrapes and bruises. According to Gia, she panicked when she ran out of gas along the freeway with no cell signal and thought it would be dangerous to walk along the freeway for fear she could have been hit by a car. She mistakenly thought she was close to a bridge that would lead her to Skykomish, which would lead her to a gas station or some shops. She set out into the woods to search for the bridge, but it was actually a little ways down the road and on the other side. Once in the forest, Gia got lost with all the brush. It was hot, but she was able to stay cool by drinking water from a creek. She survived for 9 days on water from the creek and what is believed to be huckleberries, but she was worried the berries could be poisonous if she only ate a few. We're so happy Gia's home safe and sound. And this kind of feels like the sort of episode of I Survived I would have had when I was 18. So I get it. I feel so bad for her. It's still unknown why Gia traveled 2 hours away from her home into the mountains that day, but we're just really glad she's okay and home safe.
I thought the story was going to go the way of the other recent story. I think it was the girl was named Madison who disappeared, and her purse was left in her car and stuff, but she actually just didn't want to come home. And then I was reminded, like later on in the story, about how I heard this thing on a comedy show recently that made me think about how out of control things can get so easily. Like, we don't realize that if we run out of gas or like our car breaks down or something like that and we don't have service, like how we can just be like completely lost and screwed for days. It's like the guy in the comedy show was saying it, he was lost for so long that he just didn't trust eating anything, and he couldn't find his way back to a house, and when he finally did, he couldn't say anything to the people about the help he needed aside from like, just give me something to eat, because he was like so starving. Like, I could picture that happening, and you just like your car breaks down and you're like like out of control.
Yeah, like it kind of seems like there are some suspicious circumstances here. The fact that her parents didn't know that she was going to drive so far away to the mountains. I had read somewhere online, but it didn't quite seem like a reliable source, that she had packed some overnight bags to wherever she was going. It's like, was she meeting somebody? Like, where did she think she was heading? I definitely don't think she was running away from home, but I don't think she was being completely honest with her parents.
Yeah, it is a bit suspicious to like disappear off to the mountains for no reason, with no warning, but I don't know, maybe it was a nice day and she felt for a hike, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Let's go with that.
This week we're watching World's Most Wanted on Netflix. World's Most Wanted just dropped on Wednesday, and the 5-episode series covers some of the world's most heinous criminals that have evaded capture, even with global investigations set to find them. The series covers infamous criminals like El Mayo, the head of the Sinaloa cartel, and a financier of genocide in Rwanda. Be sure to check it out and let us know what you think of the show in the comments below.
We are so excited to have Mama Margot with us from this week's favorite podcast, Military Murder. At Military Murder Podcast, their philosophy is that camouflage can't conceal these twisted murder stories. Margot, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm doing really, really good. My kids are napping right now, so I'm able to sneak away and get this interview done with you. I'm so excited.
I'm excited, and you're such a trooper. This is the second time we've worked together on a project, and I know you have such a busy life. You're a mom, you're a podcaster, you do so many fantastic things, so thank you for taking time out for us today.
Thank you so much.
The concept of your show, combining military stories and murder, is so fascinating, and it's been very relevant lately with murders of soldiers at Fort Hood, like Vanessa Guillen and Gregory Morales. What exactly inspired you to start your podcast that combines these two things?
So, most of my listeners know that I am actively in the military right now. I've been in for almost 11 years, and I've always loved true crime. I have kind of a criminal justice background, and so for me, watching the true crime shows and listening to true crime podcasts, I saw that every 10 or so episodes, there was always a mention of someone in the military, either being a victim or committing a heinous crime or even a veteran. And so I was like, wouldn't it be awesome to just have a podcast all about these? Because it's interesting, when you're in the military, we're such a community together. We're like a family, right? It's kind of like being in a sorority or a fraternity. And so one of the things that a lot of people say is like, oh, bad things can't happen while you're in the military. And I'm like, no, really, they do happen, I promise. And so I was like, I should probably, when I started thinking about podcasting, I was like, the only thing I would want to do is military true crime. And so that's basically how it came together.
That's so great. And I wanted to ask you, and I know that since you're active military, you might not be able to reveal your true thoughts. So feel free to say as much or as little about this as you like. But what's your theory about what is happening at Fort Hood right now with all of these mysterious deaths and disappearances?
Well, I'm not going to say a whole lot because I don't really know, besides knowing that Fort Hood is one of the biggest military bases around. So this gets really kind of into it, but when you get into it, us military people, we're all just plucked from society, right? We're just plucked all over the place. Sometimes a few bad ones are gonna, sneak through the cracks, and I think that's what happens. I don't know, maybe they all end up at Fort Hood, but I mean, I don't really know. It depends on what their mission is, and then also the crime around the local area as well, but I really don't know. Suicides are high in general. They say 21 or 22 veterans or military members a day commit suicide, and that number is already too high. I don't know if it's just affecting Fort Hood because they have more people, if it's affecting the Army because they have more people. I really don't know, but crime happens everywhere, and you're going to have bad people, like the guy who killed Vanessa Guillen and his girlfriend who helped to hide it. Those are just terrible people, who do bad things, and it's just really unfortunate. And Fort Hood does have a lot to answer to, and we'll see what happens in the next few months.
It'll be really interesting to see how it all unfolds, and if there is some sort of underlying conspiracy, or like you're saying, it's just random. Like, it'll be really interesting to see what comes from that. Well, What is your true crime origin? What got you into it in the first place? Was there a murder in your hometown, a story that's always haunted you?
Not really. I've always kind of been drawn to it. My dad and I like to watch true crime together, and so everyone else thinks we're such weirdos, but it's so cool to have someone in your family who's like, hey, everyone, wants to watch, a scary movie or a comedy or a rom-com. And we're like, let's go watch Investigation Discovery. And so everyone else just kind of like, okay, cool, well, bye.
Right.
So my dad has always been into it. And growing up, my grandmother used to always watch the Spanish news, like Telemundo, Univision. And you always hear about these crazy crimes. So I think really like watching the news and watching true crime shows growing up, Unsolved Mysteries, America's Most Wanted, Cops, that type of stuff. But really, as an adult, what really got me hooked was the show Snapped. And I mentioned this before. It just was such a fascinating show when it used to come on like every Sunday, and I would have to like skip meals with friends, like going out to eat, just so that I could stay home to watch it like while it was airing.
It's a really good one, and it's one of my favorites too. And I think it terrifies husbands everywhere to know that we were watching this.
Oh, it really does. Yes.
Well, you've covered so many great cases on your show. I've already mentioned that you have a fantastic episode on Vanessa Guillen and Gregory Morales. So out of all the cases you've covered, which one has been your favorite to research?
Well, there's one that's actually currently active that I kind of hold it close home. It's still not solved, and it's the unsolved murder of Specialist Enrique Roman Martinez. So he's a soldier. I released my episode on Vanessa Guillen on Memorial Day weekend. And so as soon as I released that episode, I saw a headline. It wasn't a headline. It was like a small a news source that said that a soldier had gone missing at Fort Bragg, while he was camping. And so because Vanessa Guillen was missing at the time, I was like, what is happening? Like, how are these people just going missing? They're vanishing. And so I started looking into that one, and there wasn't a lot of information out there. It was just this soldier went missing. Well, 6 days later, his partial human remains washed ashore where he and these 7 other soldiers had gone camping. And I became intrigued. I know, it was so crazy. And so then I started like putting the different news articles that I saw, I started putting them together, and then something didn't really add up to me particularly. So I thought, how fascinating would it be to, I don't know, try and get access to the 911 call when his friends reported him missing. And so then I did, and to my surprise, the audio was released. And and one thing really led to another. I put this episode together. It's actually one of my shortest episodes. I believe it's episode 35. And as soon as I released it, Enrique's sisters reached out to me. And for me, that was like, wow. They basically said, thank you so much for bringing light to my brother's unsolved murder. We don't know anything, and we hadn't even heard the 911 call. So this has really, really helped. So basically, with everything that was happening with Vanessa Guillen and Gregory Morales and everything at Fort Hood, Enrique's case started getting more access, like more airtime. And just 2 or 3 days ago, I found out that the FBI is actually now helping to solve his murder. And so that for me was just kind of like, I don't know, I just felt all types of emotions, like crying and, excitement for the family maybe to get justice. But at the same time, just still devastated that things like this happen.
That's so great. And it's so great that you were able to help bring attention to this using your platform. Because I feel like sometimes in like podcasting world and YouTube world, it's like, where are we going with this? Is it like sometimes accused of being exploitative? And that's such a good example of like what we can do with this audience we have. Like we can bring attention, we can help console a family that's missing this person that wants to find them. So how great that you were able to do that and bring them some level of hope that this could be put to an end.
Right. Yes. It is nice to have the platform, and the fact that, Military Murder, my podcast, at first I was like, okay, I'm going to get pigeonholed. Everyone's going to think this is just a military issue. But the fact that I would say probably like 30 to 40% of my listeners aren't even in the military. They just hear from their military friends about the True Crime Podcast, and then they kind of just get hooked because when at first you're just kind of afraid. You're like, should I listen to this? It's about the military, it's political. It's not. It really isn't. It's true crime that just happens to take place, and our jobs are the military. So
right. And I'm in no way affiliated with the military, and I freaking love your show.
Oh, thank you.
So you definitely got like the true crime world covered as well.
Yes. And which is nice to hear, because, you do want to, at least for me, I was like, I want to reach outside of the military. And it's so nice to get listeners who they leave reviews and they're like, hey, I don't have any connection to the military and I love your show. So that for me is like the best. And then of course, listening to the military people who are like, oh my gosh, I never even heard about that. And I was stationed at that base when it happened. That to me is like, wait a minute, a murder happened in the same place where you work and you didn't hear about it. So
right. Well, Margot, it's been so fantastic having you here today. Can you let our viewers know where they can find you on social media?
Yes, definitely. Okay, so listen to the show, just search Military Murder on your favorite podcast platform. So that's Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, Google Podcasts, anything. You can also find me on Instagram at Military Murder Podcast, and you can follow me on Facebook at Military True Crime.
Great, and be sure to subscribe to Military Murder wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss a single episode.
This week on MurderMurder.news, we spoke with monster maker Sarah from Sincerely Sarah. It's every maker's dream to turn their passion into their full-time job, and Sarah did just that. A lover of true crime and digital design, she creates t-shirts for every mood, whether it's declaring your love of murder documentaries or looking for custom shirts for an event. Check out MurderMurder.news for our interview with Sarah, plus a 10% discount code specifically for our readers. We love reading your comments, as long as you aren't an incel troll. Thanks to Food Makeup Skin for commenting on our Gladys Spar story, saying that the timing of her death seems a bit too convenient.
Thank you also to Chantella V for commenting on how Breasia Terrell's story, asking how someone just disappears and that she hopes she's found alive. We really hope so too.
Thanks so much for tuning into This Week in True Crime with Murder Murder News. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button below, give us a thumbs up, and tell all of your true crime friends.
If you just can't get enough true crime, join our commune at MurderMurder.news for our Monster Book Club and cold case solving groups. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. See you next week.